To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So, when we throw things, that is, matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern! We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter, through. We get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So, they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits, and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one, and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. But physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched.
So what does this tell us about our reality? It tells us that the moment there is consciousness viewing and defining how things should act, the infinite potentials act in that manner. The electron acted in the way consciousness defined it should act. We see two slits, we have particles. We define that they must pass through the two slits and create two lines on the other side. However, before it is defined, the particle carries out every possibility. It is limitless. Consciousness, the observer, who we truly are, is in control of our entire reality. How we define our world and what plays out is entirely up to us on a collective scale. The world is infinite potential and infinite possibility. Our consciousness can shape it in any way we choose.
Act of observation changes things.
And in addition, the more you look at individual particles, the more you realize that there is no such thing as one electron. An electron, or any elementary particle, exists only in relationship to other things, like other particles or the universe at large. This means that deeply enough, when you dive down into the nature of matter, everything we know about the everyday world dissolves. There are no objects anymore. There are only relationships. There's no locality anymore. There's no time.
Our reality exhibits a dualistic nature. The matter that makes up what we experience exists both as a wave, or non-material entity, and a particle, or material entity. This waveform that particles exhibit has no definite location within space or time, but can only be understood as being everywhere all at once, spread out through the entire universe. Imagine an apple in your hand. As a particle, this apple exists within a defined location in space and time. For this example, your hand. In its waveform, this apple would not only be in your hand, but spread out through all its possible states. But how can this be? How can something that appears to be solid at the same time have the ability to be something non-solid? And how can something that appears to have a definite location in space and time also be able to exist spread out over a large region of space? As astounding as this may sound, the experiment that confirmed this has been repeated thousands of times with the same result, and what at first came as a shock to the physics community inevitably became a well-known and accepted fact. The thing that determined whether or not particles behave like waves or particles was ultimately found to be the very thing that was observing this phenomenon: human consciousness. A particle's quality is not predetermined, but defined by the very mind that's perceiving it. So what appears to be solid reality is actually just one side of two underlying aspects of reality, that of wave and that of particle.
The physical character of the atom, the mass and the weight. And today physics studies the vibration, not the physical. So that all atoms create waves. So that the picture of the atom is like the waves with the atom in the center. So when we want to study atoms, when you use Newtonian physics, you study two particles hitting each other like billiard balls. But in quantum physics, we don't study the particles, because in quantum physics, we study the waves. And we study how the waves interact, interference. So there's constructive and destructive interference between atoms. All of the waves together is called the field. So you're made out of atoms, but you also are the field. So you are connected to everything because you can't separate waves. This is a new technology showing you pictures of atoms and electrons. And a scientist can manipulate and make a corral out of the atoms. And trapped in this corral are two electrons. And you can see the waves in the electron microscope picture from the atoms. These are the waves. And then you can see where the waves of one atom and the waves of the other atom interact and interference. So the new physics says, don't look for particles, talk about the field and the waves. This is from Scientific American, but it's not the title I'm interested in. It's a subtitle. And the relevance is this. Are you made out of atoms and molecules, yes or no? Because if you are, then you are giving off light and energy, and you are absorbing light and energy. So while you see yourself as a physical entity, in the new physics, you are energy waves interacting with each other in the room right now. And so you see us, we see people as physical particles and machines. But that's an illusion, because what we are interacting waves. That's why one person can affect another person just by being in the field.
To do a little bit of mathematical calculations based on what are called radioactive isotope studies, and you can prove without a shadow of doubt that right this moment you have 1 million atoms that were once in the body of Jesus Christ or Buddha or anyone you want to think about. In just the last 3 weeks, 8 quadrillion atoms have gone through your body that have gone through the body of every other living species on this planet. So think of a tree in Africa, a squirrel in Siberia, a taxi driver in Calcutta. You have stuff in your body that was there only 3 weeks ago. Okay. In less than 1 year, you recycle now. We used to think it was 5-7 years. In less than 1 year, you recycle 98% of all the matter in your body. So at the atomic molecular level, you have a new liver every 6 weeks. A new stomach lining every 5 days, new skin once a month, a new skeleton. It seems so hard, but a skeleton is a dynamic organ with calcium, phosphorus, everything coming and going. And by the end of 1 year, you replace almost all your body, 98%, few bits of collagen and cartilage which take a little longer turnover. So this body that Satish invited is my 2011 model. And the last time I came, I brought with me the same suitcase, but not the same physical body. Okay. I brought, my suitcase has a little longer shelf life than my physical body. So, you know, this raises a big question in science today. Who are you? If you think you're your physical body, then you have a bit of a problem. Which one are you talking about? So while my physical body has recycled from the ecosystem, it's part of the biosphere, the unfortunate word environment, while it's recycled, and you know, my personal body from year 2010 is dead, it's gone. I haven't died in the meanwhile, so I hope you agree this is scientific proof for the existence of life after death.